All right. So this week is our last week for Brightspace, last call. Woohoo. Our topics this week include grading attendance, intelligent agents, which sounds super cool, and I promise it is, and the course progress area. So let me hopefully pick the right screen here. All right, do you see a class list? Okay, so if we go ahead and start in here, I guess the first thing we'll do, let's go with attendance. All right, so when we have classes and they're in person, if you want to track attendance on Brightspace, you can do that. If we end up in like another high flex situation and you want to track attendance for different things, or if you have like an outside course requirement, like attend a professional development activity and you want to just track that they've at least completed it, you can use the attendance tool. So when you're in your course and we go to tools and we can choose attendance. All right. The first thing that we have here is attendance registers and attendance schemes. So the schemes are basically just how you mark people as present or not. So there's a system scheme, which if you wanted to look at it, you could see it. If they're marked present, it'll give them 100. If they're marked absent, it'll give them a 0. You'll see that you can copy it. So if you don't like that one, but you're like, I do want present and absent, you can see it'll show up as a course scheme. And now you also have the option to edit it. So if you wanted to track people maybe as present, absent, maybe I'm going to add an excused absence and a late as well. So I can add 2 more and I can say, you know, they're excused. When you're excused, I'll still give you a 75% for the day, or you're late, and maybe I give you a 75% as well, but you want to be able to differentiate. So you can set those up like this is my scheme for the class, and you can hit save. All right, after you've saved it, you can close it, and now you can actually use that scheme or that recording method however you like. There's also a new scheme button up here, so if you wanted to start from scratch, you could do that as well. Then if we go over to the attendance registers, you can see later that there's a button here like what is an attendance register. So if you wanted to read it again, you could, but it's basically different ways to track items. So I have 2 registers set up for here. One is in-person attendance register and another one is a virtual attendance register. So if we go ahead and look at my in-person attendance register, this one I went ahead and added everyone who is supposed to be an in-person or what didn't say that they were going to be fully online. But you can see the meetings that we have. If you wanted to add specific dates, you can, but provides an overview of how they are. One of the nice things is when you're setting up a register, there's a cause for concern. So like if their score was to get to an 80%, it would give them like give you a little notification that they are below where they're supposed to be. So if I clicked on meeting 1 here, we discussed nature and other lovely things during that week. You can go through and set everybody as needed. For a larger class, you can actually use the checkbox feature and use set status. So you can say, oh, everyone was present today, or, you know, at least if most of them were present, you can set everybody as being present and then say, all right, everyone was present except for 1 person, and change just that one. So that way you don't have to go through all of them. One thing you do want to watch out for is making sure that you get all of your pages. So if you have more than 20 students, I always recommend changing the default first, because it won't do, like, even when you select all, it won't do everybody who wasn't on the page. So you want to make sure you can see everybody first, or you're going to have to go through and do it again for your people who weren't on the page. So that's something to work out for you. You notice there's also the set status for all users button here. So you can say everybody was present. It'll let you know if you already have things entered. And then these search options are nice. If you show search options, you can see if you want to search by first or last name. So that's by user. You could also change it to group. So if your class had different groups and for whatever reason, and you wanted to see like the attendance of a group, if you have like a collaborative project that goes throughout the semester, it could be helpful for that. But here we are. So this is back to the attendance register. So now you can see on meeting 1, everybody's status is set and they all have 100% because I marked everybody as present at the end there. But if I go to meeting 2 and I'll mark everybody as absent, just so we can see, because the warning. So here we go. I marked everybody as absent and I'm going to close it. So you can see everybody's marked as absent, but now you'll see everybody also comes up with this red warning because they're below my cause for concern. So I can see, oh, everybody has a 50%. I may want to check in with them or reach out to them, all of them. When you're done, you hit done. But so to actually set up your own register, and you do have to set at least one up if you want to track attendance. So new register, you have to name it. You might even use this to track participation, like some faculty, right? Like track how many times a student talks in class, or each time, like if they make a meaningful contribution, you could actually have a participation register and just mark like they did participate that day or they didn't, or however you'd like. You can give it a description here. So if you wanted to say like, oh, we need to know more about this, or you want to share, you can. Down here, you can choose the attendance scheme. So you can see here's the one that I made up. I can choose that. The system scheme that are there as well. So I'm going to choose the My Scheme. You can do your cause for concern, like maybe you're not going to be concerned unless it's below a 75. If you want 10 users to be able to see it, you can. I always recommend leaving it checked, but that's up to you. And then different users. So this is what I was saying with the group. So like if in these situations where we had like the hybrid model and you had some students that were online and you were like, all right, now if you're online, you have to attend online. You can give them their own register and say like, all right, here's the high flex section, or like the online sessions that I'm tracking, and keep that separate from your regular sessions. So you could get really creative with your uses for this, especially since you can just keep adding new registers. Right now I'm going to do it with all users in the course. And then here I would say this is like the most tedious task, right? Is you're going to have to add all of your sessions. And you, at this point, they don't have a recurring meeting section. So if your course meets, right, the 3 times a week and you need 45 sessions, I would sit here and I'd say, all right, here's 1, 2, 3. I need 42 more sessions. Let me add them. Oh, I have to name these ones first. So I'm just going to name them 1, 2, and 3 for easy typing purposes. Add my sessions. And then go ahead and, you know, tab through and just enter all the numbers. That's the worst part of the attendance tool. Now, you don't have to add them all at once. You could just add like 5 at a time and then say, all right, now I'm going to go back in to my participation and edit it and say, all right, let me edit this and add the next 5 when you want to. So you don't have to do them all at once, but you could. But then you'll see it's just in the list here. You can see an overview of the sessions. There is view attendance data. So it's just that overall page. Same as if you clicked on it. But so that's it for attendance. Any questions? All right. So next up, let's go to intelligent, well, I guess we'll do class progress because we get to intelligent agents through class progress. So class progress is different than grades, and that grades just gives you that overview, right, of all of your students and what their scores are. So if we click on grades and you are keeping grades in Brightspace, you'll be able to see all of the grades here. And we're going to come over this more later. But class progress gives you more detailed information about your students and their interaction with your online space. So even if you're using this to support your in-person class, but you post resources online and you want to know if they're looking at those resources, here is kind of where you could go to see that information. So this main page is an overview page, right? And these columns are a little customizable, so you can kind of see what you want. So you'll see the student name, and then these 4 columns, you can pick what you want to see by clicking the settings button. So here they are. We have 1, 2, 3 different items. So I'm going to hit add indicator and say that I also want to see their discussion participation summary. So these are the items that I have chosen to see. If there's one that you don't like, you can click the context menu and click replace and say, all right, let me see this item instead. So you might have system access and login access. They're about the same. There's not any difference really to them. So you really only need one of these. But so the ones that I recommend are definitely, where did I lose my discussions? Oh no, discussions are still there. I use the content completion summary because I have, it has to be completed for them to like move on to the next thing, or they have to actually look at it or do it. So I like the content completion. There is another one that's just content visited, meaning that they've at least looked at it. So that might be good. The grade performance, if you're keeping track of grades on Brightspace, is a nice one. And then once again, the discussion summary, if you are doing discussions on Brightspace at all. Because it's nice to see like how your students are doing compared to each other in that realm, rather than just like trying to look at each student individually. So then you can see when we get here, the different areas for each student. So content completed, I can see that she's looked at 62 out of the 76 things that I've done for them. I can see how often she's logging onto the system. And then for the grades, I can see her overview, but I can also hover my mouse and see what all of these scores are. And you'll see if someone did it not too hot, the bar is lower and changes color. So like down here, they didn't do real good on quiz 2. So that reminds me, I have to actually email her back because she emailed me that her computer died. So it makes sense that she has 1 out of 30. But you can go through and kind of overview. It's nice to kind of see, and if any of your students, you're like, somebody starts doing really bad because they're in order from when they were assigned, I think. You can say, oh, what are these? Maybe I should check on them. There are 2 discussions. Maybe I should be like, hey, Kyle, check on your discussions. And then if I look at his discussion summary, I can see, oh, no wonder you have 0s for your discussions. So it kind of gives that nice picture. I like to see here like how many they've read and how many threads they have. So like they should have 8 threads in my class at this point. So you can see like a couple did most of them. So we have some that did all of them, but you can kind of get that nice overview picture of how they're doing compared to each other, which is nice. Then from here, you still have the option to filter users. So if your class has groups and you're like, all right, so I did do different discussion groups. So I can say, let me look at discussion group 1. Are their discussion numbers any less, or like what are they around? And then I could go and look at group 2 and say like maybe one of the groups was more engaging than the other. What did I do different? Did I post more in one? Did I not? Were they just more active? So you can kind of start to look at it that way. But then if you actually click on an individual student, you will see extra details about them. So if you have one that on that overview screen stands out to you that you're like, you're not doing too hot and you want to see why, you can come to this page. The nice thing is if you have your grade book set up with all of your grades in advance, you have this nice number, minimum final grade. So for your what if students, what if I do this? What will I get? Right? Your what ifers that I cannot stand and they bother me very much. I can at least tell them like, if you don't do anything else in my class, you're going to get a 68, which obviously I don't tell that to all of them, but for the ones that I know that are like, I really want the A, I can tell them that, and that will give them a good idea. Or I can say, if you get 100 on everything else, you can get a 99 in my course, but you have to get 100. So depending on the student, you can choose which way to present to your whatevers. But down here, the next cool one is content. So it gives you that overview that we had on the previous page right here, but you can also see how long they have actually spent in your course. So this student has spent, 33 and a half hours in my course looking at content. And I can go in and I can look at the different content that she's clicked on and how long she's been there. So she just clicked on this real quick, but then got out of it, or it might have opened in a new page because this is a third-party thing. She spent 8 minutes in my discussion. But yeah, so you can go through like each discussion item. So like here's all of the content for my course. I can say, let's see. This one has 3 modules. I think I have a video in here. So she never visited my overview page. But in the learning resources, she did stay on the text for an hour and a half. She looked at the PowerPoint for an hour. And this is a video that I made that she watched for 27 minutes. So like you can really get to know what your students are looking at, what they're using, all that fun stuff. For discussions, you can also see, right, discussion progress, how much she made on each one. And the nice thing is that you can see all of their posts together in one spot. So if you have a student who's like, I really do everything, or I haven't, you can kind of go through and see like, here she read 14. Now down here, this week, she only read 3. So like you can tell the energy is winding down. But all of the different areas here. So same thing for assignments, right? So you can see their grade, if you gave any feedback. So like here's the submission that she made. Here's the feedback that I gave. So if you gave like a video feedback or whatnot, they can see all of that. But you can basically go through all of these sections, whatever you have in your course. So I don't have checklists in this course or quizzes here. I have quizzes through a third party, but you'll see, so there's nothing here to review. So this will be really whatever you need it to be and whatever is important for you to look at. So it's one of my favorite tools. I love it, and I hope everybody else loves it as much as I do. But then the next thing, all right, any questions on the course progress area? All right, next up is our intelligent agents. All right, so intelligent agents is, I don't know why Brightspace has named it that, but they are basically automatic emails to help you with course management. So when you're on course progress, there's a link here that says use agents to automate feedback. And if you go to tools, if you wanted to get there directly, you can go to tools, intelligent agents. So this basically lets you schedule emails to go out based on certain conditions. So here's a couple that I have made. So this one is checking in, and it's a few days without logging in. So if a student goes 3 days without logging in, they get an email from me that says, hey, so-and-so, just checking in. you know, while you're not required to log in every day, it's helpful in an online course if you log in at least every other day to make sure you're not missing anything. And so like I can look on the course overview page and see who's logging in and not, but this is helpful because it'll automatically email them. So like we'll go through this in a minute here, but there's all these different settings that you can set up. You set up an email and then you can say, hey, here's the email, you know, and you schedule it. And then on this overview page that we have, you can see results of last run. So it says 0 people were identified in the last run. So everybody's been logging in. And you can see the last time it ran and the next time. Oh, I accidentally clicked on the heading. But so you can see all of that information. So like these ones right here are emails for people who actually didn't make an initial post. So like you can say like, oh, you were supposed to make a post. So like my discussions are weird, I'll say, because I'm trying them out in this 2-week cycle. So they have 1 week to post. So it opens on Monday. They have to post by Sunday. And then the following week is when they do all their replies. So like on Friday, if somebody hasn't posted yet, I'll be like, hey, you know, don't forget to make this post by Sunday. So that way I reach out to them in advance and they can say like, oh, right, I did need to do that. You can see, especially at the beginning when they were still getting used to discussions. And you'll notice that these ones don't have run dates, next run dates, because these are not cyclical. Like this happened one time. Like I only had the discussion one once, so I only needed to email them once for these type of assignments. So let's go ahead and go over one. So when you get to this page, you'll just click new. And then you can name your agent. Let's see. I'll do discussion 7 threads. All right, so discussion 7 threads. Edit description, I'm going to call this one didn't post to discussion 7 by day 5 of week 1. And then this checkbox, agent is enabled. So if it's something that you're like, it's in progress, I'm not sure I really want to do it yet, you can uncheck it because that just means it won't email anybody, but you can leave it checked while you're working through. So first up is the criteria section. So rolling class list, you can leave this as all users visible in the class list. However, you are also likely to get emails yourself. So like if it's like they haven't made a post in discussion 1 yet, you're a user in the class list. So you will also get that email if you didn't make a post yet. So you may want to keep that. So you get emails like a reminder like, oh, this is going on. I want to make sure I post something for the students. Or you can choose users with specific role and choose student. So in that way, it'll just go to students. And if you're like, I don't need extra emails cluttering up my inbox, you can choose that option. All right. Now down here, we have login activity, course activity, and release conditions. So depending on what you're looking to do with this intelligent agent will depend on where you live here. So my emails that said you haven't logged into the course in 3 days, those were the login activity. And I said, user has not logged in during the last 3 days. Now, you can also do the course activity one. So user has not accessed the course in the last 3 days. I did learn that you would rather choose that one instead of just the login, because login means they might have logged into the system, but they didn't necessarily look at your course. So I would choose the course activity one. But then ones like this discussion are actually in the release conditions area. So that means that you can send emails for anything based on any of the release conditions that you can create. And as you see, there are lots of release conditions. So if you have an assignment and they didn't make a submission, you can email, send an auto agent to everybody who didn't make a submission. If you have content and you're like, you want to make sure that everybody saw this one super important topic, you can be like, oh, this one's really important. Make sure you look at it, and you can send it to everybody who didn't complete that. Another one, if we continue to scroll down here, this is where we get to the discussions. So you can see I have discussions, no posts authored in topic. So that's what I'm looking for. And I'd say, all right, they didn't make any posts in discussion 7. And then you can choose, they have no threads. And the other option is no threads or replies. So I just care if I want them to make an initial post. So I do threads. If you're not as picky as I am and you're like, I don't care if they hit reply to somebody else and that can count as their post, then you'd want to do no threads or replies. But I'm a no threads person. And at the end, you just hit create. So then you can see here, it'll kind of clarify for you what you selected. I'm going to send this to people who have not made any threads to the weekly discussions, discussion 7 topic. If we go back in here in the release conditions, just to show you, show you a couple other ones. Next up, there's also grades. So if you're like, you want to send it to people who got a grade on a specific thing, if their current final grade is like less than a 60 and you just want to send them like emails like, hey, remember you should really like reach out and schedule a meeting with me to discuss this, feel free. You can also do it by specific quizzes. So if you had a quiz score, you could do that same thing. Or if they didn't attempt a quiz that was online yet, you could say, hey, don't forget to try this. And then the survey tool, remember the survey tool here is kind of like a survey about your course. So like you could use it for like an end of course personal survey type that you wanted, or like any of your own. Like if you wanted to do an anonymous survey, just collect information. That's what their survey tool is for. But you can send it. So like maybe you make a survey and then you can say, oh, they didn't complete my survey, so let me resend it to them to make sure they complete it and help increase your feedback or response rates on optional survey type items. But anyways, if we go here, you could also have multiple conditions that you want it to be. So, and you can choose any condition or all conditions. So you can get quite complex. But all of that is in step 1, the criteria. So who are you sending this to? And then in step 2, we have the actions. So the first one is repetition. And repetition only matters if this is something that you're going to be scheduling. So if you're doing this, like this is a one-time use for me, right? I'm sending it for the discussion 7 one time. I'm only going to leave it at only the first time it happens. But for like my login one, every time they didn't log in for 3 days, I wanted them to get the email and say, hey, you didn't log in for 3 days, and have it send it to them again. Remember, if you forget, there's a little help link here that'll kind of go over it with you. But so I'm going to leave it on first time, and then I'm going to choose to send an email. So you check, send an email. All right. Now, when you're in this area here, it's going to be the fancy braces, initiating user. I think it's email. Maybe it's just email. If you forget, either way, what the special word is, down here there says what special email addresses can I use. So the first one is initiating user. So just initiating user. And so whoever the student is that meets this requirements, it will email them. Then down here is your subject. So, you know, I just put like something like this. Discussion 7 threads due soon. All right, and then I would say, hey there, make sure to complete your, and for me, you could just type discussion 7 in if you wanted to, because you're like, I'm already emailing them, they can find it. Or you can use the quick link tool and say, here, let me do a quick link. to discussion 7, and it'll link right to them. So make sure you complete your discussion 7 thread by Sunday, right? Now, if you wanted to make it even more personal, so yeah, I was right. So right here, it says, what replace strings can I use? So if you click on that, and then we scroll down here a little bit, if you put any of these in, it'll help you kind of personalize your email. So one of them here is initiating user first name. So I'm going to copy that, and instead of there, I'm going to type in, hey, initiating user first name. So whatever student hasn't made their post yet, it'll say like, hey, Molly, make sure to complete this by Sunday. And it's not just like a generic one. You can also do uploads. You could record video and audio here. So if you wanted to do like a video message or an audio message to them, you could. And then down at the bottom here is the scheduling. So if this is something that you should run or you want to run repeatedly, like, so for me, I run the one about like logging in repeatedly. And if I have one that's like a low grades one, I think I did that last semester. Like if you have less than a 60 in my class, like once every, I think I scheduled it for every 2 weeks to send an email and be like, hey, reach out and let's chat so we can see how we can improve your grade type item. Then you'll want to do the schedule. So you click use schedule, you'll notice that the update schedule button becomes active, and you can choose how often you want to do this. So I'm going to do this every 2 weeks on Fridays. You can also set a start date and an end date. So if you just wanted, I do recommend doing a start date and an end date so it doesn't go like crazy like after your course has ended. Or if you're scheduling things in advance, like if you're scheduling for like for the upcoming semester, like I'm going to start my fall course, I'm going to make sure that for my every 3 days login, I'm going to pick a start date for the fall semester. I made that mistake this semester, and my students were like, before the course even started, getting emails that they hadn't logged in. So if you're working in advance, you're going to want to be careful of the start and end dates. Since this one, I'm not going to schedule it because it's just the one time. I mean, you could get fancy, like if you are planning in advance, like you could say repeats daily, repeat it every day. Maybe I'd even give them 2 days. And like, since this one's for a discussion, I'd say, all right, it's going to be due on the 3rd. So I'm going to start it on the 29th and end it on the 30th. So anybody who hasn't made posts in discussion 7 that's due on the 3rd will get a reminder email on those 2 days. And if so, the first day it goes, if they don't post, then they'll get another reminder the next day. So I could do the schedule that way if I wanted to schedule in advance. If not, I'll uncheck it and hit save and close. So we get the little message, it was created successfully, and now you can see it down here in my list. One of the cool things here, especially when you're first setting these up, is that if you hit your context menu, there's a practice run. So if you want to see like what student it identifies and then go and double check that that student like meets your requirements, you can do that. So it does take a second to actually like go through and process. So you can see now like it has this little play button. So like that's how you know that like the practice run is going through. You can see yet it doesn't have like the results of last run done because it's still in the practice mode and it takes a second. So usually I just sit here and like wait a minute and refresh the page. Eventually it comes back up. But if I go here, let's see this one that's already done. So this one you can see 3 users identified. So if I click on it, I can see the 3 emails that went out. See, this is what happens when you don't check students only. You also get emails. But then you could click email sent, and you can see the email that went out. So if I go back to intelligent agents here, let's see, it might be done. So it ran just now, and I have 15 people who didn't post yet. So Some of them are working ahead. You know, that is most of my class though, so yay for them. But you can you can see who didn't post, and you can see right now, because it was a practice run, it says that there was no action taken. So that email that we did isn't here because it was just a practice run. If you, oh, I don't want to edit it. But so like if this is the one-time one and I'm like, I'm really ready to run this now, I would hit my down arrow and just hit run now, my context menu. So like this one that's checking in, that's a repetition one. You can see that I can view history on it. So if you wanted to like go back through and look and see like, am I always emailing the same people? Or so this one has a lot because I think it's set to run every day. So here I'll put 200 per page. And you can see most of them log in constantly now. And they have not gotten a ton of emails, whereas like if I get back to the beginning somewhere, so here I had like 2 users, 1 user, 1 user, 1 user. So I think it really did help in keeping my students checking in on my course, because otherwise they got bombarded with emails from me. But all right, so that is the intelligent agent. So basically, whatever your heart's desire, you can make it work for. Are there any questions on it? All right. Right here, I forgot to mention there's enable, disable, delete, general things. So if I decided I wanted to stop this from running, but I didn't want to delete it, I would just check it and hit the disable button. You know, and then it has the little symbol here that it's not running. So, you know, and the next run date is now gone. So those are there. Also a good thing to do if you are scheduling in advance and you don't want to do the dates, you can just leave them all disabled until the start of the semester. But alrighty. I'm not used to talking so much anymore aside from these sessions, like in a straight row. I'm always like, how did I used to teach 7 hours a day in high school? But all right, so the last thing we have today is the grades section. So the first time that you ever come to your course and look at grades, it'll automatically default you to the grade setup wizard. So welcome to the grade setup wizard. It gives you an overview of all the settings on this page. If you've never done it before, I think the start button is just up high here. But you go through and click start, and it will walk you through how you want your grade book to be calculated. So if you're a weighted person, or if you're a points person, or if you want to do some fancy formula combo of the both of them. If you are a fancy formula person, please submit a help desk ticket and we will go over your stuff on an individual basis. But otherwise, most people will be in the weighted or points area. So I'm going to do the weighted one because it tends to be a little more complex. And I don't want to mess up my course grades. But you'll hit continue, and then it'll give you options for the final grade released. So I recommend having the calculated final grade released. You know, you can always put that disclaimer out, like for students, that like these grades are subject to change or subject to revision, so that way they know. But it's a good way to have them kind of see where they are in the course. And you do also have to check this automatically release final grades box. If you don't check it now and then you want to release them later, you'll have to manually go to the final grades category and make it visible to students. So if you want to have it so they can just see them kind of as you're going through, you'll check this box here. Next up is grade calculations. So ungraded items, if you are planning your grade book out in advance, right? So like my course, everything for the semester to be graded is in there from the beginning. I do drop ungraded items because otherwise that would make them, you know, otherwise like any of like the future discussions, like when we start on week 1, everything would come in as a 0. So their final grade's going to say 0%. And then they would basically be like slowly chipping their way away to get to where they want to be, which, I mean, You are welcome to do whatever you want. I think that makes them like sad and panicky though. So I don't recommend it, but you are welcome to do it. Now, if you're a person who's adding things to your grade book as you go, like throughout the semester, and maybe you don't enter a grade for students who don't submit anything, then you'd want to treat the ungraded items as a 0. So you could say like they didn't submit it, so it should consider it a 0. But if you have everything in ahead of time, I would say leave drop ungraded items. And then I also do the automatically keep final grade updated because it's just one less thing for you to have to go through and do. So anytime you enter a score, the final grade will automatically update. And the next area is the default grade scheme. So here is the organization scheme. It's just regular percentages. You can also do course schemes. So if you wanted to add your own. So I have some assignments that are pass-fail. So like if you had a pass-fail course, you could make it so the grade book will come up with a pass-fail option. I leave it as the percentage, and I just have this course scheme for like certain assignments. So you could also use that on your own for certain assignments as well. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so I recommend percentage for most people. Step 5, these next couple steps are like nitty-picky details. How many decimal places do you want to see? And I think it defaults to 2. And then step 6 is what the student sees about their grade. So the points grade, so like even though my categories are weighted, they're going to see that this assignment was 100 points and what they got. They'll see their weighted grade, so like what that boils down to out of their total score. The grade scheme symbol, so like from that grade scheme, like the percentage, they'll see, and then the grade scheme color. So I like the color because, you know, if they're not doing too hot, it's another visual cue because their grades will be lots of red. How many decimal places do you want the students to see? So it might be 1, or you might say none for them. And then number of characters to display for text items. So like if you have a comment field, how many characters do you want it to be? And then I do have the display final grade calculations to users. So we had 3 things for final grade calculation. We had the automatically release it, automatically update it, and then display it. So I recommend that you keep all 3 of those checked to make your life easier. Now, if you have a reason not to display it or show it throughout the course, you can just manually do it when you're ready. But if you don't have a reason, make less work for you. We hit continue. Step 7, it just gives you an overview of all of the settings that you picked. So you can see here we have the automatically release final grade, automatically keep updated, and display final grade to users. All checked. And when you're done, you can hit finish, and it will take you to this screen. So you generally won't see this screen unless you've just finished the wizard. So it doesn't come up everywhere and you will not find it again. But everything that you can do here are these tabs right here. So create new grade category, new grade item, and import grades are all done from the enter grade, or are all done from the manage grades tab. Create a new grade scheme is done from the screens tab, right? Manage grade items and categories, and enter grades. So this just shows them to you in a different way. I just don't want you to keep looking for this screen after you've done the setup wizard, because unless you do the setup wizard again, the buttons will not look like this because they are these areas. So if you're a categories person, or now that you're a points person, you're like, I want to enter things into the grade book, that's where we'll go to manage grades. So manage grades is where you say, here are all of the things I want to grade. Not this is what the grades are, but here are all of the things I want to grade. So these slightly shaded areas are my categories. It's got a slight shade to it, but you can also see by the indent, right? So this is a category. It doesn't have a type or association or anything, but you can see the weight of the category. versus this is an item. And you can see the item type is numeric. An association means, is it related to anything else in Brightspace? So this is an actual discussion that lives in Brightspace. This is an external learning tool link in Brightspace versus, yeah. So pretty much all of mine are things in Brightspace. Now, if you are doing the Brightspace gradebook for an in-person class, you might not have an association for everything. You might just enter the grades in the gradebook just like you would in like an Excel document per se. So an association means that you have a Brightspace assignment, discussion, activity, something that this is tied to directly. You can see your point values and the weight. So up here is the new button. So you could do a new item or a new category. I always like to do all my categories first and make sure that I get my category weights out to equal 100. If your category weights don't equal 100, it'll give you a little warning message at the top that your categories don't total 100. One of the cool things here is the bulk edit button. So you can see here's the category. Here's the item I had. So if I wanted to change the title, I could. The short name, that's just for you in the grade book. The students don't see the short name at all. So this is just a way to keep your columns nice and narrow so your screen looks nicer. So you don't have like a super long grade book. You can edit the max points. The weight you usually can't change depending on how your category is set up, but you can automatically change it to a bonus assignment. So like if you're like, oh, I changed my mind on this one, it's just a bonus. Or you can also change it to if they can go over 100 points or 100%. You can do the can exceed. You can also change the grade scheme from here. So maybe I want this introduction one to be a pass-fail one instead of a percentage because they either did an introduction or they didn't. And you can adjust the category. So if you have something in the wrong category, you could change it and say, oh, it shouldn't be in discussions and participations. It should be in final activities. So in the bulk edit, it just did it for that one because I had it checked. But if you check everything first and then hit bulk edit, you can edit everything all at once. So that's super nice. You'll see, so once again, like the short name here. So like rather than my column saying discussion 1, it just says D1. So it keeps it narrower. So that way I can see like all the discussions at once versus just like 3 of them. But there's that. So after you have everything set up here in terms of your grade categories and items, we can go to the Enter Grades tabs. Now, if a grade item has an association, meaning it's related to something in Brightspace, you will grade it through that item. You'll grade it through that assignment, through that discussion, generally. So if I were to show you here, right, like here is my handy dandy grade book. You can see here's all my short titles. So like this is my introduction discussion. This is discussion 1, discussion 2, but it doesn't say that all for the students. But you can see that these have an association. So like I can go and look at this and say, here's the item that she submitted. So I can see for her introduction, she did 1 thread and 3 replies. Here's her intro video, and here's all the replies that she made. If you have items that are just in your grade book that you wanted to grade, let's see, like this one. When you click on a context menu, there's the Enter Grades button. So if you wanted to just enter the grades directly in the grade book, you can. Like I could sit here and say, you know, set grades. Here, I'm going to give everybody a 200. It'll enter the 200 for everybody, and then I could go and change it. There's also feedback for everybody individually. So if you wanted to click on it and type in their feedback, you could. Let's see, there's also an exempt and unexempt option. So an exempt might be, you know, special circumstances or a student with accommodations where an assignment might not line up with them and you want to say, I'm not going to score them on this one. So like, I know I've had 1 or 2 students this semester that ended up, you know, like with COVID, and I was like, don't worry about this discussion. It's fine. I'm going to exempt you from this. So you click on them, make them exempt, and that grade doesn't affect them. You don't have to score them on it. It doesn't affect their grade in any way. So you can also unexempt them just as easily. So that is there. And this is all, remember, directly from the grade book. It's not actually score them. They'd all love to get 200 points on quiz 3. I'd be like, yes. It's better than that 50 I got on quiz 2. So there is an import and an export feature here. So there is an import that you can actually import grades from an Excel file. The special version of Excel is CSV. So they give you a sample here. So if you're that person who likes to do grades in Excel and you're like, I'm just going to import them occasionally, you can download this sample file and set up your grade book using this template and then just work out of Excel and import it later. So like if I were to show you the Excel file, I think it's more work than it's worth because you do have to get all your students' IDs and their names have to be entered first, last. But then you could name it. You could say what their grade was, right? It's discussion grade symbol if you have it. You can still add comments this way, but I think it's more work than necessary. You can export it though at the end of the semester. So like if you want to have a copy of it or like once a month you want to export it just in case something happens with Brightspace, there is an export button here. So you could export it. You can say what you want to have, what information about your students do you want to have, and what grades do you want to export. So everything. And then you can export to the CSV or a traditional Excel file. My favorite button on the grades page is coming up here, and it is the switch to spreadsheet view. So this is why I really don't think you need to work in Excel, because if you have all of your grades entered, the spreadsheet view lets you edit everything all at once. So if you wanted to update everybody's score, you could. The only thing that's not here directly is if you wanted to leave feedback. But you can see here's an assignment that I have set up as pass-fail. So like it just comes up with a pass-fail dropdown. And you can see final calculated grade. So like maybe their adjusted grade, I'll do something like they have a 96.69. So I'll just say they have the 97 out of 100. Or do I have any wonky people? Anybody close? No, I don't. All my students are doing pretty good this semester, surprisingly. So like this person, right, they have an 80.91, which is technically a B minus, but maybe I'm like, oh, I know she's emailed me a lot and been working really hard, and I know she has this like extra extension coming in, or she did some extra work. So I'll be like, all right, I'm going to give her the B instead of the B minus. So that's what this final adjusted column type would be for. If you want to make like those rounds or changes, you could. I don't want to do that though. All right. Now, cancel. So what I was saying before with the associations is that like all of my discussions, I don't actually enter grades for the discussions from this page, right? I go to my discussions, and when you were setting up the discussion, you would have had the option to add a grade item. So like see how this discussion says includes assessment? that means that it's tied to one of those items in the grade book. So when you are setting up your discussion, there's tabs up here, and one of them says assessment. So on this assessment tab, I would say that this grade item, and it'll give you a list of things that don't have associations. So I'm going to associate this with discussion 1. If you're building your grade book as you go, you'll just click new grade item and say like, all right, I'm going to make this a grade item and make it connected to the grade book. But you'll choose that grade item. So that's what makes the includes assessment icon show up on the discussion. So the nice thing then is that when you're here, if you click your context menu, there's assess topic. So I'll click on assess topic, and it will take me to a list of all of my students. Usually if it'll show up here like as like nothing like needs to be evaluated. But if you click on a student, I don't know why my pop-ups are weird. I think it's because I have too many screens. But so I can see, if I look at this student, I can see his threads, I can see his replies. I have a rubric here. So I like checked off, he didn't meet the basic requirements for a rubric because he missed replies because I'm a stickler. But I gave general feedback, and then down at the bottom, I can see the posts that he made. And then you can enter the score. So the score doesn't have to align directly with the rubric. Like I'm just like, you're in this category. You are in the needs improvement category. If I go to somebody else like here, Sandy, because she does posts or did posts, I can tell. I'd look at hers. For me, I look at this, I say she has 1 thread, 2 replies. So she definitely met the basic requirements to have a 70 because she did all those. And then general feedback, but I could scroll down and say, oh, here's her discussion 1, and here's her replies. And then I would give her whatever score I thought. And I'll be honest, most of my people, as long as you do the post, because it's math class, you get meets requirements. But 8.5 is my standard discussion score because I make them go above and beyond to get 100. But so you can see all of that there, and all of the scores that I enter here will directly populate on the grade book. So I didn't enter them in the grade book. I entered them on the assignment, and they're connected. The same thing happens with quiz scores, with assignments. As long as you are on that assessment tab, so like here's an assignment, and you can see it has an assessment item associated with it. This is not in the grade book currently because it doesn't have an assessment item associated with it. So if you wanted to have like a major project, but have them do like the breakdown assignments, you can make it so the breakdown assignments are there and you can give them feedback, but they don't have to be part of your actual final grade or calculated into your grade at all. So anytime you see this ribbon, you'll be able to see the grade book item. So if I look at this assignment that doesn't have it, and then I go down here, submissions, evaluation and feedback, you can see that the grade item is none. So I can click on it and I can choose the grade item that I already have made in my grade book that matches it. I could add a rubric if I wanted to, but no, out of score is required. So score out of. If you're going to grade it, you have to give it a score. But then you'll see the student view preview. So this matches what I set up in the gradebook setup wizard of what students could see. So here's the color. They see their points and their percentage. You can change it. So I could say maybe they don't see the color scheme and they don't see the points. So now this is the only thing the student would see. So you can see how much detail you're giving them. The nice thing is that anything that you are grading in with an item like this, right, that's connected to Brightspace, either an assignment, a discussion, a quiz, is that it will show up in your handy dandy quick eval tool. So the quick eval tool just highlights everything that you need to grade in your courses across all of your courses. So if you have 4 sections and You want to see them all? This will be everything that you need to grade. So I can see here's everything in my course that's related to grade items. Discussion 4 has 3 new posts, so I should check those out. Excel Practicum 2 doesn't have anything new. You can see I've graded 21 out of 22 of them. Somebody didn't submit. But you have this action, so you can dismiss this. Like if you're like, I'm going to dismiss it till somebody submits it. So I don't want to see that again until somebody submits it. You might say, all right, I'm not accepting any more submissions on this at all. Like we're beyond that. So I'm going to say dismiss it forever. Like I'm not coming back to it to grade it. But the nice thing is right here, it will take you to those items to be graded or assessed. So this took me right to the first student. It shows me 1 thread, 2 replies, so I can say she meets the requirements. I could leave her feedback. I can go down and read all of her stuff, and I can enter her score. And then you can either save as draft or publish. But then you can use these arrows at the top to go right to the next student. So it'll just go through all of the items. So now I have my next student and I can just keep going. And this is a great way to grade discussions or if you have quizzes or different items that way. Up top here, I have back to quick eval. One of the nice things is that you can view it by different ways. So this is by activities. You could view it by submissions, which is helpful because you could like view it so by submission date. So like you could say what's the most recent submissions. Maybe I want to go to my oldest submissions and start there and grade those items first. You can also filter by activities. So if you have 4 classes and all of your classes do an introduction discussion, or like it's the same course, just different sections, and you're like, I want to grade all of these, you could pick that and grade all of those. So this will definitely help streamline your items in terms of grading, at least. And when you are on the Marywood homepage, for Brightspace, not the Marywood homepage, the Brightspace homepage, the quick eval button is linked right here. So like if you're like just coming in, you're like, I'm in the grading mood, like I don't want to look at my course and I don't want to feel like I have to like make other things or do other stuff. You can just log in, hit quick eval, and it will take you to that overview page because it's all of your courses for everything that needs to be graded. Good thing we started on time today, Chris, because I'm already 4 minutes over. But all right, lots of fun information today. Do you have any questions?
No, I think I understand everything you went over today. Wow. No questions.
Perfect. All right, then I will stop our recording.